My mother's home, which is this old estate that has been in her family for God knows how many generations, was some shit. A few stories really stand out from it. She found a curio cabinet in the cellar and wanted to get rid of it, but she lives in such a rural area that they just burn rubbish. When she put it in the pile and lit it, her words and those of one of her employees, it began screaming. She had a picture of the fire pit afterwards, everything completely reduced to ashes while the curio only had some of its varnish burnt off. She was so unnerved that she brought it back inside and set it up in the living room, and the thing terrified me every year that I went to her house, only finding out the story behind it when I was 16 or so. Things would go missing all the time. My grandparents were visiting and my grandfather went to fix one of the bathrooms, but he couldn't find the tools that he left on the sink a few minutes before. He went looking for my mother, thinking she put them somewhere, and began finding them on the stairs, on various pieces of furniture, and in my younger brother's crib with him sleeping next to them. My mother wasn't even home. Mum's only cat was an outdoor cat, a dark furred short hair. Every single day she'd go into the dining room, rub the carpet or walls, and come away with handfuls of white cat hair. She had never owned a white cat, nor did anyone on the estate ever see one, especially in the dining room, which was otherwise sealed off behind heavy wooden doors that I couldn't pry apart until I was 5. The cellar had cold spots. A wine cellar is typically about as cold as a cave, around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius. That's a uniform temperature. It has to be, otherwise your wines age at a non-uniform pace. There were spots in this cellar, with no possible cause that I could ever distinguish, which were so cold that you could see your breath, like a 15 minus 20 F divided by 5 minus 10 C drop in temperature exclusive to a small region. This would shift every few hours or days, again for seemingly no reason, and standing in one was kind of like standing on your lawn during an electrical storm. Something about the air was completely different from that a few feet away. She wanted to sell the house and move to her townhouse. Some other family moved in for a week. On the first night, they called her to ask if she had forgotten a pet, because something in her closet was hissing at them. She didn't have any pets at the time, and her bedroom is on the 2nd story, 2 floors above ground level, and otherwise sealed off. By the 3rd night, they had cancelled their negotiations, and didn't speak to her other than to say that they were no longer interested. When we went back to the house, everything felt like standing in the middle of an electrical storm, and half the downstairs windows were broken from the inside. This didn't die down for the entirety of that summer, and I remember crawling out the window and sleeping outside, because I'd constantly have nightmares that something was angry at me and wake up feeling like someone was standing all around me and hate fucking me with their eyes. She'd regularly wake everyone else up by shaking us and saying "Stivalai. Stivalai. Boots. Boots." Boots being the pet name she gave to the sound of steel-toed boots kicking walls in the attic. Nobody in the house even owned boots, and nobody going back 3 generations of her family had worked in a profession, which would explain why there are steel-toed boots in the house. There was a fire when I was around 7 or 8 years old that started in the cellar and pretty much gutted the whole place, though the frame was surprisingly unscathed. She had her priest come out the day after and bless the entire grounds, renovated it, and nothing has happened for over a decade. I'm kind of on the fence about the cause of any of that. I'm not much for angels and diamonds and all that shite, but I do believe that we leave some sort of mark on the planet when we die, a sort of unquantifiable energy residue which sticks around areas that we had strong emotional investment in. The stuff that I personally saw doesn't have a rational explanation. The stuff that I've heard secondhand barely has an irrational explanation.